This is the Lifestyle Builders Podcast, Show 50, Building a Tribe That Buys with Jessica Lorimer.
The other thing with that is that people forget that you have to do that consistently. Market research and going back and re-identifying with your ideal client every 3 months is really useful, but we don't do it. We don't like to ask our audience questions because we feel like they might think, oh, well, they don't know the answer and, oh, this is uncomfortable. And the reality is that, good market research should be done regularly so that A, you can check in that those people are still your ideal clients, and B, that you can figure out what to sell them because they change, and as you start solving their problems, they develop new problems.
A little bit more about our guest, Jess. Jessica Lorimer is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, podcaster, and most importantly, a sales coach who teaches business owners simple sales strategies to skyrocket their income and impact. All right, you guys, we are so excited to share this episode with you. I can't even tell you how many gold sales nuggets we had on this episode.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs struggle with sales. I've been at conferences or events where people have asked a question like, how many people are selling every day? And the hands that go up are very small. So most businesses have an opportunity to sell more and to ultimately impact more people. And that was something we talked about with Jess, is that, selling is serving. And a lot of what you'll hear in this episode isn't like the sleazy selling or the tactics that most people are aware of. It's like, how do you legitimately help people and then make a business and make more money by doing that?
Yeah. And that was what we talked about, was building your tribe. How do you go about building your tribe? How do you make sure that you're continuously selling to your tribe? How do you make sure that you're keeping your tribe around you and, just selling with integrity? So there were a number of topics that we covered on this episode. So we will let you guys dive in and enjoy the show. All right, you guys, welcome back to the show. We've got a super amazing, awesome guest today with us. Hello, Jess.
Hey, I'm excited. You've also got Max.
Yes, we have to talk about Max.
Yeah, I'm afraid you can't see him, but if you hear him snorting, it is him. I would like to point out is the dog, not a child.
I'm going to be honest. So we do podcasts together, and I don't think I've ever had an intro like that. I don't think you've ever said like, super amazing, awesome guest, my husband.
Oh, no, I haven't. Sorry.
I feel left out.
I guess I saved that for our guests. You are awesome, but I don't have to remind you that I live with you every day.
All right, as long as we got it recorded.
Yeah, this is fine. If you'd like, I can make a little sign for you. Like, I'll just do it, like hold it up random intervals.
Tom, a super awesome, amazing host.
Yeah.
Perfect. But anyways,
we have brought Jess on to share all of her amazing sales knowledge that she's got, and specifically around building a tribe that buys, which is something that Jess has done very, very well.
Well, I've done okay at it. Like, I'm going to be British here and, try humble. It's a new look for me, admittedly, but I'm going to give it a go. Like, humble pie. Yeah, I did okay about it. Like, we've got a few people who listen to the podcast and stuff.
Yeah, I would say you did more than okay since you've been invited to speak on stage now at multiple events.
Yeah, since speaking at Upreneur in November. Quick plug for Chris Ducker. Chris Ducker, come on the show. Also, look at me plugging Upreneur. There we go, helping a friend. No, so seriously, I'm speaking at Upreneur this year, which I'm really excited about. I spoke at Media Influence Live this year. I've been lucky enough to speak at a few business conferences. And I guess the thing for me about building a tribe who buys is that it's not about the number of people. It's about having a really warm, engaged audience who actually want to buy. And the biggest thing that I hear from everyone is, oh, my audience, there's something wrong with them. They don't want to buy stuff from me. And I'm like, yeah, sure, there's something wrong with them. Like, obviously it's their fault. And we never think about like how we're actually training people or what we're asking them to do. And I think that plays a huge part in building a tribe who's actually engaged and who wants to support you, but also wants to support you with money, because that's important for the business.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of that comes back down to kind of figuring out who's in your tribe.
Yeah.
Because so many of us start out and we're talking to everybody, and then you struggle because no one's talking back to you because you're not very specific in your message or what you're selling or who you're selling it to.
Someone has been on one of my courses, like. No, but seriously, you're exactly right. You know, the thing is, I think what happens when we start out online is, especially if you've come from corporate, I know Tom's come from corporate, we've all kind of had these backgrounds, you're basically trained to fit in. So you're not trained to stand out, you're trained to be a little corporate clone that is replaceable effectively, so that when you leave or eventually come to your senses and decide that you're going to be a boss, or you're going to, you know, go manage a team or set up your own business, that they can just put somebody else in your place and nobody will really know. And I think that when we come into the online space, that's what we do. We gravitate to this vanilla way of communicating because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to say what we really think, because previously when we've said what we've really thought, people get upset and it, you know, creates friction and there are issues because suddenly we don't fit in, you know, and that's where we start with this desire to be liked, you know, and the thing about building a tribe who likes you is that that's great. If you want hearts and, you know, emojis, that's fabulous. I love those too, by the way. Feel free, give me as many as you want, but they don't pay the bills, you know, and that's the thing. I think sometimes we work so hard to be liked in the online space that we forget what we're actually there for. We forget the business side of things, and we forget that, you know, we can still be nice to people, we can still have great relationships, we can still nurture great relationships, but we don't have to do that in a way that's passive. You know, we get to do that in a way that's active and that actually benefits our business later on too.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a great point. So especially in like the online space, there's so many of these messages of like, oh, you got to build a list. Oh, you got to build an audience. And what we've actually found is that it's less about quantity, especially early on. It's more about quality. So that whole act of like really understanding who your ideal customer is, it takes a lot more time than people realize. It's not just let me sit down with a sheet of paper, fill out some questions, and I'm good. It's really a lot of conversations. And the more that you converse with your ideal clients, even people who aren't, because they're going to help you figure out, all right, this person clearly is not our ideal client because of X, Y, Z. Then you start really building those deep relationships. Like you said, it's not passive, especially at the beginning. But I think so many people miss out on the opportunity to really understand their customers, which then makes everything else easier later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing with that is that people forget that you have to do that consistently. Market research and going back and re-identifying with your ideal client every 3 months is really useful, but we don't do it. We don't like to ask our audience questions because we feel like they might think, oh, well, they don't know the answer and, oh, this is uncomfortable. And the reality is that, you know, good market research should be done regularly, so that A, you can check in that those people are still your ideal clients, and B, that you can figure out what to sell them because they change, you know, and as you start solving their problems, they develop new problems.
That's one of Tom's favorite things. Always talk about that.
This is just going to be great, isn't it? But it is that situation. I mean, we were talking before we jumped on, and I obviously have to put this in here now. We were talking about Harry Potter. Okay, so J.K. Rowling is possibly one of the savviest businesswomen in the world because she wrote a book and she was like, okay, cool, here's a book. Great. It's a little known book called Harry Potter. Some kids might like it. When it turns out to be an international bestseller published in like 20 languages or whatever it is now, instead of sitting there and be like, oh, that's cool, people like the book, she went, okay, what's their next problem? Oh, well, they want a sequel or they want a film version. And when the film's finished, great, well, what else can I do? What other characters can I pull out of this book to continue solving the problem that everyone wants to spend time in this magical world? If you're not a Harry Potter fan, then I would be sorry, but you should just read it until you like it. Like, that is my advice.
I have not met many who aren't Harry Potter fans. I think I've only met a couple people like over the space of the last couple of years who haven't ever seen the movies. And I was like, what? What do you mean?
Well, and you know, like people may miss that fact. So I think it's worth repeating is the fact that when you get somebody to buy and when you find that ideal customer, it is then so much easier to solve their next problem than it is to keep going out and finding more and more people. And it's crazy. Like I see people all the time. One of the biggest mistakes they make is that they start building that tribe of people that have purchased from that like from them. And then instead of just really focusing there and continuing to solve their problems, they go out and want to find the coldest person and the person that's going to require the most work and the most work in building that path to becoming a customer, rather than just saying, all right, I have this core group. How do I continue serving and helping them more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about this when I hosted my event earlier this year, and we were talking about lifetime value of a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's huge, because generally people think, okay, great, that person's bought from me once, awesome, they're gone. And it's like they're dead to you suddenly. Even if you're seeing them regularly on your email list and your Facebook group, suddenly you're not thinking about them as a potential customer again because they already bought. But actually the reality is, at that point in time, they're warmest to you. They want to buy more stuff from you, because it's a lot of work for a customer to identify, can I trust this person? Are they going to get me results? Do I like them enough to work with them? You know, all of these things that are going on in their head for their own due diligence. It's actually much easier for them to continue working with you if you can continue to provide value than it is for them to have to go out and find someone else. You know, and I think when we talked about that lifetime customer value average, in my business, one customer is worth $20,000. That's a lot of money, you know. So technically I could just have 10 customers a year, you know, if everything was going smoothly, and be having, you know, 200,000 a year just from 10 people. And when we start looking at that, you know, one of the things that I used to do in corporate all the time was look at how can we always be increasing that lifetime value, you know. And it's not looking at customers and being really mercenary and thinking, great, how much can I squeeze out of him? It's okay, well, sometimes, depending if you like them or not. I'm joking. Integrity is everything, right? But, you know, it is about looking about that future problem. What can you solve next? Or how can I find somebody else who can solve their problem and monetize that, you know? And that's when people go off into the affiliates and stuff like that. But I think it's super important.
Yeah.
All right. So let me ask, just if people aren't familiar with some of these terms we're throwing around, so customer lifetime value, does that mean every customer is going to be worth $20,000 to me? Like, what does customer lifetime value really mean?
I wish they were. So the average customer lifetime value in my business is $20,000. And all that means is that the average person, when they buy from me, will spend $20,000. Now, some people will spend more, some people will spend less. And when you look at your business, that's going to be determined on what you sell. So if you're somebody who sells low ticket but high volume products, your lifetime customer value might be a lot lower, but you'll have a huge volume. So you'll make up for it that way. Whereas if you're somebody who's a premium seller, you might have a huge lifetime customer value, but like we just talked about, only 10 customers a year. So don't kind of get hung up on, okay, I have to have quantity and quality. Look for what are they really bringing in? And for my business model, how does that need to work?
Yeah, well, and so here's an example on another case. So obviously we have a wine and liquor store. Our average cart value or sales price is $21. So what we figured out was that, hey, if we could increase that, even by $1, the number of transactions we have coming through a year, that can actually bring us a lot more money. So that's just a single transaction. So it's like if you sell somebody something, can you get them to buy one more thing? But what we've implemented lately has been a customer loyalty program to now say, hey, come back in. So what we're doing is basically saying, okay, well, you purchased this one time, but if we can get you to come back in, now just like in this case, our average customer is spending more money with us because they're coming back to us again and again over time. So now instead of us having to go out and find a whole new group of people, it's like, hey, let's keep helping these people that are already coming in, and we're giving them more of what they want, and we're ultimately making more money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And then the other thing that you could do for that, free tip, is take it one step further and give them a bonus for referring people to you.
Ooh,
so you ask them, bring a friend. Okay, if your friend buys 6 bottles of wine, you get 1 free.
That's a good idea.
Or you both get a bottle of wine for, I don't know what your margins are, but, you do that kind of thing and you make it into an evening and everyone brings 1 friend. And suddenly you've got 10 new customers. Mm-hmm. And every month you go, hey, bring a friend, and you've got 10 more and 10 more and 10 more. And within 10 months, you've got 100 new customers with your loyalty scheme, with your increased ATV, your average transaction value. Suddenly you're like, whoa, that just added a substantial amount to my bottom line.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, it's similar to what a lot of people do in the online space where they have affiliate programs. So I guess I didn't really think about that when we had implemented the loyalty program, but I love that addition onto it.
Well, I was going to say, so we had a guest on previously, Dale Hensel, and one of the things he always talks about is income stacking. And it's like, if you get this one thing, what else can you do to stack the income on top of it? And we just stacked the income 3 times as we were talking through that. Mm-hmm. So for anybody listening, one of the things that has been very beneficial is looking at these models that maybe another business is doing outside of your industry and pulling it back in. You know, because oftentimes we just look at our competition and we say, well, what are they doing? Maybe I can do it. But we found if you go, like, because in this case, most people in our industry don't have a referral program. Mm-hmm. But if you look in other industries, it's very prevalent. So if you can take those ideas and pull it into your industry, now you're different and innovative in a way that most of your customers aren't, or your competitors aren't.
Well, let's pull that back to what we're talking about here, which is building a tribe. That is one of the best ways to keep building your tribe is by treating people well, by offering them different rewards and different ways to keep coming back to you and saving money or getting more awesome things like bonuses and stuff like that. That's been one of the best ways that we've started building our tribe. And I know you've built your tribe that way, and so have so many others. So, I mean, it's all of these different pieces that I don't know if people see when they're looking at other people's businesses from the outside because, you know, they only see what everyone's showing. But when you look at the inner workings, all of these things are working together to ultimately create those super, super raving fans.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, the great thing you touched on there is, you know, to bring it back to Tom's point and then your point on building a tribe, offline works really well online. Mm-hmm. You know, I think one of the things that we discredit in the online space when we're building tribes or when we're making sales is we assume that offline businesses are archaic, they have it all wrong, and you know they don't know what the heck they're doing. It always makes me laugh because I cut my teeth in the offline world, and that's where the best sales skills happen. That's where the best brand building happens. You know, look at companies who've inspired loyalty for years and years. You're either a Mac person or you're a PC. It doesn't matter which you are, but you are solidly bought into that brand and you stay with them and you are part of their tribe and their fan base for years and years and years, unless something major happens to make you change. And I think, you know, we have to start looking at this instead of it being offline versus online, we have to start looking at the similarities between the two and where we can actually find synonymous ways of, you know, working and harnessing the power of both worlds to make them work together.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And part of it too is that if everybody, let's say online, is doing a certain thing, part of like marketing is being different. And oftentimes when everyone's doing one thing, if you do the opposite, you're going to stand out. And what's interesting, because we came from the offline world as well, Ariana just went through and did like a customer journey map of like where our customers came through. And there was a lot of interesting findings, but one of them was most of the people that end up working with us have either met us offline or they've had a call with us. So like we'll have an upcoming episode actually talking about kind of that customer journey that you guys can be listening to and walking through more. But what we found really with a lot of this stuff is most people don't want to have conversations and they don't want to do that work early on. But that was the biggest thing we found was that the majority of our customers either had a direct conversation with us or were a referral because we gave somebody else and we built our initial tribe with such a good experience that most of the people came through that way, not all these other advertising methods.
Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, this is the thing. Word of mouth is still really powerful. It's funny because I don't know when this is going to air, but by the time it does, this will have finished and I will be able to have given people an actual overview of how it worked. But we are running a challenge next week in my business. And so one of the things that we've done is we've used advertising in the past. We used paid advertising through Facebook ads. This time I was like, I don't want to advertise to a cold audience. I want to try something different, which I would only recommend if you've already got tried and tested methods, you know, you can rely on later. So don't just go ahead and do something brand new without scoping it out. But we created a Facebook ad and the whole idea behind it is that they tag a friend. So instead of actually this being targeting people we don't know and trying to convince them, hey, come join the challenge, this is going to be great. What we're doing is targeting the people who already registered and saying, you know, it's going to be great. Go tell somebody else so that they do. Because I know that when somebody says to me, oh, this wine is great, or these shoes are lovely, or this fish tank is the best one on the market, I will go and buy that one because somebody told me it was. It doesn't matter if they're an expert or not, but if there's somebody I already know and like and trust, I'm way more predisposed and way warmer to exploring that idea because it's come from a warm avenue, and I think we discount that. And that's something that does come from the offline world. That's huge when it comes to building an audience, and especially an audience that buys. You cannot get a better recommendation than from somebody who's already bought from you and then says, go and buy from Tom and Ariana because they're amazing.
Yeah. Well, and even Facebook has that now as an option. Ask for recommendations for anything in the world. You can add a location. It just goes to show you that that is still one of the top ways for people to get information. Instead of going and typing in Google and trying to find something, I would rather just ask people I know if I'm looking to buy something or looking for a service somewhere and say, hey, I need this done. Where have you guys gone to get it? And take some of those people, because then it cuts out my time of having to go and find somebody, trusting that they're going to do what I need them to do, and putting up front my wallet to say, hey, I want to hire you to do this.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think, this is the thing. When we look at the audiences we're building, when people say to me, oh, my audience don't buy, there's usually two reasons. One is you've trained them not to buy, and we can talk about that in a sec. But the second one is, there's always a juicy bit. The second one is, what kind of audience have you built? Have you built an audience that are predisposed to buying from you, or have you built an audience of cold people who naturally are going to take longer to warm up and who don't identify with being your ideal client? So actually, they're not buying because they hate you. They're just not buying because they're not relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And I think, like you said, we'll talk about it in a minute, that training your audience not to buy from you is a problem that many of us have had in the past. And we had our own experience with that. All of these people out there telling everyone to build a Facebook group. So everyone's going out and building a Facebook group. It takes longer than you would expect to build up that Facebook group. And then a lot of us fall into that trap of wanting people to love the group and stay there. So we never sell to them. And we start building that group without putting that precedent forward, saying, hey, if I've got something that you might need, I'm going to offer it to you. So then you create, what do you call them? Baby birds. You create the baby bird syndrome, which is an audience full of people who just want all of your free content and the value that you're putting out there. And they don't want to take that next step and raise their hand to that actually buy from you and invest in something.
Exactly. And I think it's really common. I think this is the thing that we see online all the time, because we do get strung up by vanity metrics. And if we look back at, why that is, and we look at, this kind of point that we discussed earlier about coming from corporate, wanting to be liked, wanting to not rock the boat, wanting, to have the vote of the people, so to speak, it's not uncommon for people to feel like selling to people early on might make them uncomfortable enough to leave. And ultimately, because we are focused on numbers all the time, we are focused on likes and on, oh God, I need, 10% of my list to buy and this, that, and the other. It does mean that we don't want to do anything that's going to get rid of the people who actually aren't relevant or who actually we can't help. Chris Ducker says, attract the best, repel the rest. Second plug for Chris Ducker. Jeez, what am I on? I'm like, I should be getting paid for this. But it's that kind of thing. He says attract the best, repel the rest, because you can't worry about that. When you're building a business, like we've discussed and kind of agreed on unanimously, it's not about having millions and millions of people in your audience. It's about having people who are trained to buy, who understand the boundary between them as a prospective client and you as somebody who's running a business, but also somebody who wants to provide value in the business and make impact elsewhere. There's a big difference between wanting to make an impact and wanting to work for free forever until you are resentful and burnt out and, living under a bridge. Those are two very different scenarios. And I think, that's what we have to start really looking at, is how are you setting that initial boundary with your customers? How are you making them feel like every part of the journey is valuable, whether it's free or whether it's paid, and that actually it's a natural stepping process to go from great free content to great paid content, and then potentially somewhere else entirely.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, so we had Heather Gray on the podcast a handful of episodes ago, and one of the things we talked about with her was that this we call it the money mindset myth, but basically this thing that we only see with online business owners and not offline. Like offline, when we opened our wine and liquor store, it was like, okay, we put a lot of money into this, so we have to sell because we got to pay our bills. So there wasn't all this other stuff about like, I'm afraid to ask somebody to buy, because guess what? We had a great product, wine and liquor. We found and attracted the people that wanted wine or liquor, and then we paired it.
Yeah.
But you see all these people in this online space that don't look at business that way. And they're like, well, let me pull all these people in. I'll give them all this value. And it's like, listen, if you're pulling the right people in, you're giving them value by buying. That's why they're giving you money. You know, so what we find so many people online do is that they end up getting into that and they're almost afraid to sell, not realizing that selling means there's an equal exchange of value, where I think it's valuable enough that I'm going to give you money, but I can never do that if I never ask you for it or never present that offer.
Yeah. And I think we have to look at the fact that, you know, I firmly believe that selling is serving. If you're selling like a used car salesman from the 1980s, then more for you. A, you're not going to sell much, and B, you know, you are sleazy and grimy, and that's okay. Like if that's your jig, no worries. But on a genuine level, on a kind of 2018 level, selling is service, you know, and it doesn't make your work any less impactful or any less transformational or any less useful just because you charge for it. In fact, it makes it worth more, because when people are invested, they actually want to get the outcome. So instead of giving them a ton of great stuff for free that they never use and then turn around and think, well, I'm just going to blame Jess because she gave me all this stuff and I consumed it, and so it must be her fault it didn't work. Instead, they invest in it. And what happens with investment is you get implementation. And that's where the change actually happens. And that's where people realize, oh, actually, this works. I can do this. There's something happening here. And that's when you worry less about, oh, do people think I'm money grabbing for wanting to sell stuff? The reality is, you know, I'm always saying to people, you have to make an impact and an income. The two are synonymous. They're not something, or they're not two things that should be ever felt as polar opposites. Because ultimately, if you don't have money, if your business doesn't make money, it's not going to survive. And if it doesn't survive, you don't get to stand on the stage. You don't get to inspire. You don't get to motivate. You don't get to do any of the things you want to do because you no longer have access to those opportunities.
Yeah, and that's, you know, what we find a lot of times, and I'm sure you experience similar things, is when people aren't selling, it's usually a lot more to do with them than anything else. You know, it's maybe not believing in the product, not believing in themselves, the notions they have of what selling means. And I agree. I say the same thing, like selling is serving. What we're going to do is we've picked this customer base and we're going to serve them. And like some of the things we do, other people are like, are you guys crazy? Like when people leave our services, we go and basically say, hey, it's been great having you. Before you leave, let's just help you on your next step, because we want you to be successful whether or not you're our customers. And guess what happens when we do that? A lot of people don't leave. Yeah. Or even if they do leave, they had such a good experience that guess what? They go and then tell all their friends. You know, so coming back to this tribe concept, you know, this is something that like every business can implement. And if you're truly looking at how do I serve this tribe, I mean, it's going to come back to you so many-fold.
Well, and I think we touched on it towards the beginning, was continually doing that market research, not with the cold audience, but with your customers, with the people that are buying from you, because we've gotten so much great feedback by asking our current customers the same questions as we would go out and ask, you know, someone who doesn't maybe know us that well yet. But we're getting better feedback from those people that we can then turn around and implement in our business, not only making their experience better, but making the new people that are coming in, their experience a whole lot better, which then means they're going to stick around a lot longer because now they're having an awesome experience. And it was the first, you know, they decided to join, and within a week, they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. We're putting that foot forward to say we are here to serve you. And regardless of what everyone else in the industry says, whether they say we're crazy because we're doing onboarding welcome calls, like we don't care. We're going to do what we feel is necessary to serve our customers right now. obviously, things change as you grow. There's a lot of things that you as a business owner, I'm sure you don't do the same things now that you did when you were first starting, but you get to make that choice as the business owner and say, I have the availability to serve my customers in this way. I'm going to do such. If it changes in the future, it changes. I'll accept that. My current customers will accept that. But, this is kind of like the evolution of what you go through as a business owner.
I completely agree. And I think, the great thing about getting feedback consistently from the people who are actually paying you means that they're relevant. Their feedback is relevant. I have a phrase that I won't use on here because this is a family-friendly show about feedback and who we take it from and things like that. If you want the meme, you can find it somewhere. It's on the internet. But, I think we have to start looking at who we really want to impress. And when you're talking about building an audience who buys, when you have that first customer, they are your most important person in the whole world. But that's how every single one of your customers should feel.
Yep.
Because then they go out and tell another person and another person and another person. And suddenly you end up with a bunch of people who all feel like the most important person in the world. And you might have to automate that process. You might not be able to do everything manually anymore, but the more feedback you get from them, the more relevant it is. When people in my free community, with all due respect, come to me who've never bought anything and say, oh, I think you should be giving us this and I think you should be doing that. I'm like, I think you should be spending more time on your business and less time emailing me because, quite honestly, at this point, you don't know me well enough. You don't get to be part of my feedback circle. Mm-hmm. Because whilst you are important to me, you're not as important to me as the person who showed up for themselves and invested in themselves and in me. Mm-hmm. They get to comment on whatever the heck they want. They can tell me what they want me to improve. They can tell me what they think is going really well. But until you are there, I'm probably not going to accept that feedback from you. I'm going to listen to it. I'm going to make you feel heard. But am I going to go to bed at night and worry about how it's impacting my sales? Probably not.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so glad we're talking about feedback here because far too often, especially like you said, people that come from corporate, everyone avoids feedback. They don't want to get it. They don't want to give it. And they definitely don't want to ask for it. But that's one of the biggest things is, feedback lets you know, okay, where are the current holes that I can fill? Like if you're not talking to your customers now, they might be really annoyed with something, or you might be missing a key thing that's going to keep them around and really help them get the results. But if you don't ask them, you're never going to know. And guess what? They're going to leave and you're not going to know. The next person's going to have the same problem. They're going to leave and you're never going to know. So one, feedback helps to improve your existing products, offers, and better serve. What it also then does is help you, like what I always say is, what do you need next? Because if somebody's going to leave your service, usually it's one of two things. Either the service isn't meeting their need and they're going to go find something else that does, or they've gone beyond that service or that offer and they want the next thing. Like you said, what's the next problem? So oftentimes one of the ways to build your business is say, okay, we've graduated people from point A to point B. Now let me ask them, what is point C for them? And maybe that's another product or service that I can then offer to increase that lifetime value, continue serving that customer and keep them with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's exactly it. And again, the alternative to that is, if you're like me, I'm very lazy as a business owner. I would say I create as little as possible. You become an affiliate for something or someone who solves that next problem. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about that is that, yes, you kind of look at it and go, wow, I'm losing that customer. And if that customer is potentially worth $20,000 to me and they've only spent $5, what will happen next? What if they go and buy from person X for the next 15K? Actually it's about the art of reciprocity. Yeah. What happens when you become an affiliate for something, or when you start growing an audience and you start collaborating on that basis, is that the people who buy from you, they will go on and they will buy from somebody else. And that's a natural fact. But that other person is more inclined to send people your way too.
Yeah.
So when they have somebody who isn't right for them, you're going to be the first person they think of. And so it does work both ways. You've got to be thinking about this. It's not that there are magical people out there who just buy anything. I say that, I am that person. I will buy literally anything. If it's got a good sales page and a countdown timer, I'm there. So if anyone's struggling for sales this month, just put it in my inbox.
Just find Jess.
Exactly. But it's that kind of thing. People aren't out there who are just magically trained to buy. And I think that when we look at some of the greats, when we look at, Marie Forleo, or we look at Tony Robbins, or we look at, James Wedmore, anyone, and we say, well, that's not fair. How come they got 2,000 people in their last launch? Or how come they can fill out a stadium of X amount of people watching them talk for hours on end? It's not that those people were just unicorns that they found through really expensive Facebook advertising. It's that actually those people have had relationships. They've been primed. They've been trained. They've been nurtured in the right way. They've been given free content that's valuable. They've had a boundary set that says, this is how far you can go with this free content. Wasn't it great? If you're the person who wants more, here's how you can access that. Yep. It's a paid service, but it's going to be epic. And so they've gone on and they followed that process, maybe not with that one person for the whole time, but they have followed that process and they've gone on to become very self-aware and conscious buyers. Yeah. Now, again, doesn't mean they'll buy anything. It means they'll always make the best buying decision for them. And that's what you want to start cultivating with your tribe. You're building an audience. You've got to see this as a long-term strategy. It's not something you don't pick up 10 people overnight and be like, yeah, cool, what can I sell you? This is a longer-term game, but it is the one that pays off.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because the other challenge that a lot of people run into is they have too many offers. So there's definitely a point where it's like, every time you put a new offer in place, it takes you more time to create it. You've got to get the positioning down, the marketing down. You're building up a whole new thing. Obviously, if the offer can be to the same audience, it's less of an issue. But this is also where knowing kind of where you fit and then doing strategic partnerships or joint ventures will help. And like you said, if you kind of create this network or ecosystem of here's where you fit, here's the steps before you that maybe somebody else does, and then here's the steps after you, then you start kind of you're serving that customer, but you're serving them all the way through their needs, even if you might be a piece of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the whole, that word ecosystem is the most important word when it comes to building an audience who buys, and also I think to a degree, selflessness. You have to get over this fear that people are going to buy from other people and then will never buy from you again, because it's not true. I've had customers over the last 4 years who bought from me my first year of business, came back in my third, went off for 6 months, came back in my fourth, and there will always be those people because they will naturally gravitate towards you, whether it's to buy directly from you or to go, hey, Jess, have you got an affiliate link for that course, that's knocking around at the moment, because I know you affiliate for that. It might not always be what you expect, but it is about having that ecosystem. It's about understanding, what is the real journey of your customer from point A to point Z? How much of it realistically can you guide them on? And more importantly, how much of it do you really want to guide them on? Yeah. Because I don't want to teach certain things, and I'm very open about that, because there are people out there who love it and therefore are much better than me at it. So why wouldn't I want the people that I have spent time building relationships with, that I know, that I trust, that I think could really succeed? Why wouldn't I want them learning for the best person for them?
Yeah, it's all about your customer's journey, and you're serving them on whatever leg they're on, and you may be a part of that and you may not be, but I think and that's something that we've had, people come back and talk to us before and say, I can't believe that you referred me out to someone. And we're like, well, ultimately we want you to succeed. Like, regardless of that's with us or with someone else, we want what's best for you. Like, we're not going to try and sell you something that's not a great fit. And I think that's always something that you've talked about and I've always admired, is it comes down to one thing, and selling with integrity.
Yes, exactly. And I think if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, that's cool, I refer everyone out and I just never get paid, but that's all good because I'm just being in integrity. That's altruism. That's a completely different concept, and ultimately it doesn't benefit you not to sell. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying is there are going to be some things you can sell, you want to sell, and that you can fulfill, and there are going to be other things that you can't. For the things that you can't, find somebody else who is congruent and can be collaborative with you, but not competitive. And that way you're always going to have a steady stream of leads between you, and a steady stream of happy customers.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. So I'm curious because we've talked on a whole bunch of different really good topics. So if somebody has an audience, what do you think is the biggest missed opportunity that most people have that they don't realize with the audience they have?
Not actually selling to them at all, or putting out an offer once and feeling like because nobody saw it or because nobody bought, they're never going to do it again. I think, we've kind of touched on it about the baby bird syndrome. So I firmly believe that a lot of entrepreneurs have been taught, rightly so, that you should give away awesome free content all of the time and that's going to bring you people. And it will, to a point. If we consistently train people like baby birds that we're just going to rock up every time and give them knowledge, and only ever expect them to consume, they're not ever going to set an expectation of us that they ever need to step up, that they ever need to invest, that they ever need to take any action for themselves. So when we ask them to do that, it can be really scary for them, and also for us, because we're now thinking, oh my goodness, now there's this pressure because now I have to make money. And so you have this desperate energy, with as less woo as possible. Like I'm really not into that kind of stuff, but you do come across as the kind of needy guy who's been on one date and is like texting you 17 times just to keep in touch, and that's not what you want, and that's not what your customers want. And I think that when we build these audiences, we can get so caught up in that I have to give great stuff for free, I have to give more great stuff for free. But what we end up doing is we put people in this loop and we never give them the chance to get out. So we're like, here, have this free thing, and they consume it and they go, yeah, that's great, I wish there was more. And at that point, instead of going, cool, here's more, it's $100, $1,000 or whatever, you go, okay, I'm going to go and create that, and it's going to be free, and I'm going to put you in it again. And so they go into another free loop. And every time they want more, we create this expectation that there will never be anything that they're going to have to step up to the bar for. And I think that's ultimately what freaks most entrepreneurs out about selling to their audience. And it's the worst thing that can happen, because by this point, your brain goes into caveman mode. And you have that fight or flight response, and you have anticipatory fear, and that kicks in, and you start thinking, but if I sell now, what will happen? And your brain starts to spiral with, everyone in my audience will leave, I'll never make any money, I'll have to go and get a job, blah, blah, blah. So you don't do it. And you go into this continuous cycle of not doing it, or when you are selling, you're not selling openly and transparently and proudly. You're just kind of like, oh, maybe it'd be lovely if you could awesome sort of buy that kind of thing. That would be nice. Instead of just being like, look, here are the key benefits of why I think you should buy this and why this is right for you. I know it's the right decision for you because you've been in my tribe for so long, and I've consistently looked at the market research from you all. I've consistently looked at the feedback. I've consistently looked at, the questions you've asked and where you've done really well and where you've fallen short. And this is the solution that I've created just for you. That's a completely different offer.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's interesting too, kind of related to that, when most people come and say they're struggling with selling, the first question is, how many offers are you making? And most times they're not making a lot. Mm-hmm. But the thing I want to point out is, and actually I'll make a parallel and then I'll come back to it. I worked a lot with leaders in like larger organizations. And a lot of times when they were struggling, they would say, nobody is doing the things I want. And I would say, well, how many times have you communicated that? And they're like, well, I had an all hands meeting. We told everyone. I don't know why they're not doing it. It's almost the same thing with selling. It's like, you can't just make an offer once, one, expect everybody to see it, and then two, think they're automatically going to be ready.
Yeah.
Yet what we've found is that people will say, well, I sent an email out and nobody bought, or, take it offline. I put a radio ad out and nobody bought. And it's like, well, not everybody, and actually a lot less people than you think, actually see your offers. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've done some stuff in the past where, like when we had a Facebook group, every time we put a new podcast episode out, we would literally link it in the group. We'd run some ads. We'd do all this other stuff. And then at one point,
we would ask how many people knew we had a podcast.
Yeah. And people were like,
oh, you have a podcast?
Yeah. Where can I find the link to it? So I guess the point of that is, for most people, you think maybe you're making too many offers, but more often than not, you're probably not making enough, and people probably aren't seeing nearly as much as you think they are.
Mm-hmm. And you have to remember, not everyone is ready when you make the offer the first time. That doesn't mean you stop offering it to them. That means you circle around, you give, you walk through whatever content you're walking through, or you let them kind of continue on their journey, and then you offer it again to them at some point. Yeah. And I think one of the best things that I've ever done, which was also one of the most scary things I've ever done, was after we had a launch, I had tagged all the people who clicked on the link in the email, and I sent an email out to them and was like, hey, so I saw you clicked on the link. I was just, I'd love to hear why you didn't buy. Because we want to make sure that we're making the right offer, or that we're communicating effectively what this is really about. And I actually had people respond to that email, and I was like, oh, all right. And they made some good points. They had some good feedback. There was a couple people that had very weird feedback, but take everything with a grain of salt. But it was helpful, because then it wasn't about us. It was like, it wasn't, oh, we're not buying from you. Like, we don't like you. We don't trust you. It was, oh, okay, they're not buying because they're not ready, or they didn't understand the offer, or whatever it was. Yeah. So then it gave me peace of mind, because I know one of the most stressful things for a lot of us out there is trying to sell something new, or trying to go through a launch mode. And it's just everything. There's so much pressure and all of these thoughts behind it and everything. So it helped a lot to kind of bring me back to, okay, this wasn't a bad thing to ask for feedback.
Yeah. I think this is the thing, in sales, they used to joke in corporate that I had skin like rhino hide, because I would cold call people. That's where I started. And I would like cold call people, and they'd be like, get lost, and slam the phone down. And I'd be the person who called back and said, hey, I think our call got disconnected. Like, I'm not sure what happened. And they'd be like, why? That was just for entertainment. But that's what I did on my weekends. But it is that kind of thing where I think we do have to start being a little bit more resilient about, selling. And the reality is, yes, you may get a no, but it's not personal. That's the thing. Business isn't personal. And I know that in the online space, it can feel like it is, because we do get close to people. We have Facebook communities. Everybody's approachable. Everyone's accessible. You're emailing and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is that people don't buy for two reasons. One is they don't trust you to get them the results that you say you can get, which is very unlikely if they've stuck around in your tribe and you've been emailing them consistently and talking to them and all that kind of good stuff. The other reason is that they don't believe in themselves enough to get where they want to be. And neither of those things are really that personal. Mm-hmm. Yes, it can sting when that perfect person that you really think they would be right for the offer, I had them in mind when I created it, doesn't buy. But the reality is, it's always a not right now. Maybe this offer isn't right now. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe the money isn't right now. But it's always a right now. It's never a, I'm a diehard no, I just stay on your email list because I hate you so much that I love seeing your emails in my inbox because I just laugh at you and have a secret Jess voodoo doll or something. I think we have to get away from this fear that if you are rejected once, you're always going to be rejected forever. I mean, men have been doing this for centuries. I don't know a girl that's ever asked a guy on a date, but I know a hell of a lot of guys who've been cut to the knees in public by terrifying women, and yet all of them are now happily in relationships. They're doing other things. They didn't think, okay, well, that's great. I'm just going to sit in my hole over here for the next 60 years and hope that nobody ever looks at me. We've got to start getting over that fear of what if nobody buys? Well, what if 10 people do buy? Reframe it that way. Start thinking, well, why wouldn't these people want to buy instead of why should they? Well, nobody really cares why they should. Yeah. They want to. They've been following you. They're part of your tribe. They want to support you. They want to see you succeed because they know that when you succeed, so do they.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, and kind of wrapping up a lot of the thoughts that we had here, I'm a big fan of consultative selling. So a big part of that is being able to ask those questions and guide them to a decision. And that decision's either a clear yes or a clear no or a not right now.
Yeah.
But it's basically helping somebody get that clarity as to where they go, because it's not good for that person or for you if they're in the middle. And like part of consultative selling that I really like, one, it does serve them, but two, you learn so much every time you go through that process. So you start to then understand what are the common objections, what are the patterns people go through, and then how do you better craft questions and take them down that path to serve them. And the better you get at that, the better you're going to find people end up coming to you, because you can help maybe overcome the objection of they don't believe you're the right one. Well, what can you be saying differently, or what can you do to prove that? Or if they're not confident in themselves, if you really understand, well, how can I ask those questions, or where can I take them to overcome maybe just that fear they have, but it's not real. So I'm a huge fan of that, because one, it helps them, but two, you learn so much by going through that process.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I think at the end of the day, you do have two types of salesperson. You have the sleazy salesperson whose job is to overcome everything and just bulldozes down obstacles or tries. And you have the consultative seller. Of course, this is when the fashion police are now about to but it is that kind of thing where you have the consultative seller whose job it is really to help get them to make an empowered decision. And that is your job as a salesperson. It's about helping somebody make an empowered decision about what's right for them, not what's right for you. And sometimes that's very inconvenient. Mm-hmm. But the good thing about that is that if somebody goes away, you know, I turn away 60% of people and say, look, I can't help you right now, but in 3 months, or when you've done this, or when you've learned that, come back, because that's when I can. All of those people come back and ask, you know, because you've given them the right steering with one decision, they know you're not going to steer them wrong with something else.
Yeah, I love that. So I feel like we probably just covered it, but what's one thing you want the listeners to take away from today's episode?
Don't be a douche when it comes to selling. You know,
I love it. Quote of the day.
Meme. I do think that though. I think, you know, I think it goes both ways. Douche is such a great word because it covers so many things. But for me, it's got two elements to it. One is don't be the sleazy seller. If you don't like being sold to in a certain way, don't go out and do it. It doesn't matter how many people tell you that you should be or that it's the right way. It's not. You know, your customers deserve to feel valued, and it's your job to make them feel like that, whether they've paid you right now or whether they're about to. You have to make them always feel like the number one person in the process. And I think the second thing about that is don't be a douche in kind of the capacity of that you don't sell in your business and that you let your business go under. You know, I'm always saying to people, if you're walking down the road and someone stepped out and a lorry was about to mow them down, you wouldn't be sat there like, hey, on the curb, hey, Mr. Man, please move out the way, otherwise you're going to get like sploshed. You would be straight in there with a rugby tackle, getting them to the other side. And I think sometimes we don't do that. Sometimes we don't grasp the opportunity because we feel like it would be pushy, or we feel like it might make somebody feel uncomfortable. And we forget to look at, it might just save them. Mm-hmm. So does it matter if for 1 second they feel a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit burdened? Not really.
Yeah, I love that.
That's gold.
This is a good analogy too. Mm-hmm. All right. So Jess, where is the best place for people to reach out to you if they want to find you and just follow all your wisdom?
Head over to the website. That's probably the best, snazziest looking place at the moment, going through a rebrand, doing lots of shiz with that. It's called smartleaderssell.com. So you can head over there, and there's lots of blogs and podcasts for your infinite amusement. I will warn people though, mine are possibly more explicit than Tom and Ariana's. So yeah, if you've got kids, listen to the ones without the E in iTunes. That will help.
or bring your earbuds.
Earbuds. Yeah.
All right. I love it. And of course, we will include the link to Jess's website and all of her other things that you can find her Facebook group and all that in the show notes, which is at tomandariana.com/50. All right. It has been another great episode with Tom and Ariana, your hosts and lifestyle builders. And we want to extend a very special thank you to you, Jess, for coming on the show and talking so openly and honestly all about selling in your business.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely. And so as always, guys, remember, it's your life, your business, your way. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Are you a Lifestyle Builders podcast fan? We'd love to hear from you. Head on over to tomandariana.com/iTunes and leave us a review. Are you frustrated by a lack of momentum in your business? Do you want real-time guidance and support from seasoned entrepreneurs who really care about your results? If you're nodding your head or awkwardly shouting yes in public somewhere, then we invite you to join Lifestyle Builders, a mentorship program designed to meet you where you are and give you strategic and custom guidance so you can build the business you need for the life you crave. You can find out more at joinlifestylebuilders.com.
Your life, your business, your way. Join Family Entrepreneur Life. Join Family Entrepreneur